Sometimes you can have the grandest of all adventures in your own backyard. Sometimes you find that everything you need in the world is right where you're standing. This story is not one of those sometimes. 16 is the magic number, right? It's the age you get your driver's license. It's how most of the characters in stories are when they get called away on fantastical quests. But the biggest thing about being 16 is that life finally seems to begin. And on that note, prologue. Hello, how are you? That's how my parents have always taught me to begin a conversation, even if that person plans on torturing me in science class for the rest of the year. Oh, what would the world be without those good old Midwestern values? I live in the far northeastern corner of Indianapolis, Indiana, otherwise known as Geist, a realm within a realm. Out here, we have a lake that's usually toxic and may even produce the world's next Loch Ness monster someday. People in this area are friendly and largely Catholic, as is my family. I have wonderful parents, Dan and Debbie, two grandparents, Nana and Papa, an awesome brother named David, who is taller, not older, and a dog who has mastered the art of pickpocketing. I attended the school down the street, St. Simon the Apostle, for 9 years, where I learned a lot about God. It was my family, though, that taught me to be grateful for what I've been given. Finally, I learned how to learn from the mistakes and successes of the people around me. Now, I go to Burbuff Jesuit, where I'm involved in too many activities for my own good, the chief two being yearbook and volunteering. And I have what I consider to be a huge number of friends. There's Megan, Lauren, Alex, Aaron, Kelly, Andy, Sean, Nick, Casey, Liz, Sarah, and so on. My friends are part of my family, and I love them all very much. I love art too. You probably didn't know this, but I'm naturally very impatient, which is why I have to make art. It's the only thing that forces me to slow down and find that inner calm during the middle of a storm. This is my world. Welcome to it. Without further ado, Chapter 1. Once upon a time, in the exotic city of Indianapolis, a young man was speeding down country roads in a little green car with his wife beside him. Normally, his wife didn't like it when he exceeded the speed limit on old, cratered roads, but tonight was an exception. Tonight, she needed to see a doctor about a little girl. Several hours later, I was born, Catherine Marie Juliette Motzinger. Quite a mouthful, eh? To be fair, I added the Juliette part last spring when I was confirmed. Can you tell I'm a romantic? Chapter 2. Fast forward 15 and a half years, and I'm a sophomore in high school, suffering from some pretty intense wanderlust and yearnings for independence. Then, out of the blue, one bitter winter day, a brochure arrived in the mail from my dad's alma mater, Hillsdale College. Normally, I'd just throw all of those brochures straight in the trash, but for some reason, I decided to open it. Inside were descriptions about studying art and history in distant lands, visiting ancient cities, and meeting people from all over. Best of all, for a trip to Italy, the price really wasn't that bad. Plus, I would get college credit. I was so excited, but then I remembered something. It's from Hillsdale, a college I really didn't like because my dad kept pushing it on me. So, I tossed the brochure on the kitchen countertop and walked away, because I am woman, and women in my family are stubborn. Chapter 3. Later that evening, my mom called me into her room to talk to me about the amazing opportunity that was dangling in front of my face. She told me that she would cover the cost if I wanted to go, and that I shouldn't miss out on something because of my own hard-headedness, or because of my fear of going to a foreign country by myself with a big group of people I didn't know, and meeting people who wouldn't speak my language. For me, that was the hardest part of the journey, deciding to take it. Chapter 4, July 2009. At long last, I make it to Rome, Italy, the heart of the Mediterranean. I'm accompanied by one professor of classics, his friend the crazy Austrian tour guide, and 19 other kids from all across the U.S. We arrived at our hotel after hauling our suitcases through crowded narrow streets for blocks, and promptly crashed in our hotel rooms. The rooms had no air conditioning, or standing room for that matter. After an hour, I convinced my roommates to help me buy a phone card so I could check in with my parents. The card I bought was nothing more than a receipt with a 24-digit phone number to dial, and then 7 steps to follow before you could even punch in the desired phone number. After 20 minutes of being that tourist, I called my home, and guess what? Nobody answered. Talk about a culture shock. There I was, standing in a foreign city, clutching a foreign payphone, surrounded by people who didn't speak any English. Even my group members were strangers to me, and my mom didn't answer the phone. I felt so alone and nearly burst into tears on the spot. Chapter 5. Never tried to make a phone call after that. Thank God for email. Anyways, the trip progressed and I began to get over the culture shock. I had a much larger shock to deal with. My classmates. They were from all over the US and they were an eclectic mix. Half of them were, there's not a nicer way of saying this, super nerds. Pocket protectors, Harry Potter glasses, jeans 2 sizes too small, and a 100-degree heat wave, I might add. Collared short-sleeve polos tucked into said jeans, and white socks hiked all the way up. And go figure, they'd swallowed the textbook. The snobs made up another fourth of the group. Everything in their wardrobe was designer, so, naturally, everything from their shoes to their sunglasses was impractical for virtually any place we went. Clearly, they'd never stayed in anything less than a 4-star hotel or eaten anything but gourmet. One guy threw a tantrum because his hotel room in Florence didn't have a balcony. OMG, stop the presses. Those kids were there for vacation and summer flings. Psh, learning, as if. Then we had the 3 Bible beaters. Southern, ultra-conservative Protestants who could relate practically anything to Scripture. Or speech and debate tourneys. Finally, there was my roommate Isabel and me, the only 2 sane ones in the group, and 2 of the 9 who weren't homeschooled. After 2 days in Rome, we visited the Vatican, the world's smallest country. In the lobby of the Vatican's museum, we met up with a perky Danish tour guide dressed in teal from head to toe. With her, she carried a pointer with a teal loofah ball jammed on the end of it. Apparently, she had a loofah to match every outfit. We proceeded through the museum, emerged in the center of the Vatican Square, near the obelisk, and our professor said, "Okay, everybody, see you in 4 hours. Ready, break!" Stranded in what is arguably the holiest city in the world, with the Roman sun beating us over the heads, all we could do was look at each other. Then, everyone scattered. Isabel and I were separated in the crowd, so with my infamous sense of direction as my only companion, I proceeded into St. Peter's. The church was enormous, with sweeping arches adorned in gold and mosaics that might have taken 100 years to make. Tourists from every walk of life swirled around me in a dizzying mix of oriental perfume and body odor. Panic started to creep in, but then, nothing. Cheesy as it may sound, a surreal inner calm enveloped me, and this little voice in my head told me everything was going to be okay. I guess you could call it a supernatural wake-up call. Chapter 6. From that moment onward, I started truly enjoying the trip. I walked through the Colosseum and the Forum and ate a ham and cheese sandwich at a building referred to as the Wedding Cake. I went to Pompeii and tripped over the same uneven stones that people tripped over thousands of years ago. I raced through the winding streets of Siena to find an old Dominican church, and I haggled with tricky vendors. In Florence, I saw Michelangelo's, Da Vinci's, Botticelli's, and Donatello's. At night, I attended street performances hosted by a Charlie Chaplin impersonator, and then listened to music on the steps of the Uffizi. I saw a Carbonieri chase, and I touched a statue crafted by Michelangelo. Quite simply, I fell in love with Italy. The last day of the trip, though, I still felt as if I had missed something, some brilliant insight that everyone who goes to Europe is supposed to find. We spent the day lounging at our hotel in Civitavecchia, which is a tiny coastal town right outside of Rome. But nothing momentous happened. And at last, the Roman sun dipped below the horizon, the last time I would see it before a 5 a.m. flight back home. I waited until everyone else had fallen asleep, and at 1 a.m. I snuck out of the hotel room and took a walk in the moonlight. The sea and I were the only 2 awake in the whole world. Perched on an outcropping of stone, I looked out across the water and the perfect cloudless night. Every star in the galaxy was out. And suddenly, I understood. Having a wizard pop up at your house and tell you that you're going to be the stuff of legends, or being woken out of a deep sleep by the great booming voice, just isn't something you can expect will happen to you. Life doesn't work that way. You can't wait for adventure to find you. You have to write your own story. Epilogue. That realization gave me a whole new perspective on life. I returned happier, more sure of myself, and confident that I could chart my own course. Perhaps it's kind of self-centered, but I think I am my own boon. I don't know where I'm going, but that's not important. What's important is that I'm going. In the words of so many before me, and I lived happily ever after. For now, I am only a junior. The end.